John had always enjoyed a peaceful childhood, filled with backyard games and afternoons spent watching cartoons. However, recently, he had been haunted by fragmented memories that seemed to emerge from a part of his past he couldn't fully access. Among these memories, one stood out prominently: a children's TV show he had watched during his early years. These recollections were vivid and detailed, featuring colorful characters, catchy songs, and episodes that, while initially cheerful, carried an unsettling undertone. Intrigued and somewhat disturbed, John began asking friends and family about this elusive TV show. To his surprise, no one seemed to remember anything about it. His parents, despite their attentiveness, had no recollection of such a program. His childhood friends also denied knowing anything similar. This denial fostered a growing sense of isolation in John, making him feel as though he was navigating an unknown territory where his own memories held no validity. Determined to uncover the truth, John started revisiting old childhood belongings. He sifted through old toys, illustrated books, and even an antique radio that had belonged to his family home. Yet, none of these items referenced the mysterious TV show. The more he searched, the more perplexed he became, as if the show had never existed despite his persistent memories. Nights became increasingly restless for John. He frequently woke up with the eerie sensation of being watched. Small noises, like indistinct whispers or faint footsteps, disrupted his sleep. Sometimes, he felt a presence in the room, even though he knew he was alone. These experiences heightened his anxiety and reinforced the belief that there was something more behind his fragmented memories. In an effort to find answers, John delved into the internet, exploring forums and online communities in search of any mention of the TV show. However, his search seemed futile. There were no traces of the program in digital archives or old records. Frustration began to weigh heavily on him, but his determination to discover the truth kept him steadfast in his quest. Meanwhile, John's memories continued to resurface. He recalled specific episodes, interactions between characters, and even minor plot lines that seemed harmless at the time. However, there was something disturbing about these episodes that he couldn't quite pinpoint. It was as if a shadow was always present, even in the happiest scenes. One night, after weeks of insomnia and unease, John had a vivid and intense dream. He was watching the TV show again, but this time everything was distorted. The characters had eyes that seemed to follow his every movement, and the cheerful children's songs sounded warped and almost menacing. As he tried to wake up, he felt a cold hand on his shoulder, pulling him back to reality with a sense of sheer terror. Desperate for answers, John realized he needed to dig deeper. He felt that he was touching something beyond mere memories. An invisible force was trying to communicate with him. He sensed that he was on the verge of uncovering a dark secret that had been carefully buried in time. With a mix of fear and determination, John prepared to dive into the depths of his own memories and confront the mystery threatening his sanity. He didn't know what he would find, but he was resolute in his mission to unravel the truth behind the TV show that, strangely, only he seemed to remember. In the weeks following his unsettling dream, John felt an unrelenting urge to uncover the truth behind the mysterious TV show that haunted his memories. The frustration of finding no trace of it in digital archives or among his acquaintances only deepened his resolve. Determined to piece together the fragments of his past, John embarked on a solitary investigation, convinced that the answers lay hidden somewhere within his childhood. John began his search by revisiting old family belongings. He meticulously sifted through boxes of forgotten toys, old illustrated books, and an antique radio that had been gathering dust in the attic. Each item he examined brought a brief flicker of his lost memories, but none provided any concrete clues about the elusive TV show. The absence of any reference to it in his possessions only intensified his sense of confusion and isolation. Realizing that physical items were yielding no results, John turned his attention to the internet. He scoured forums, online communities, and databases dedicated to old television programs, hoping to find even the slightest mention of the show. Hours turned into days as he navigated through endless threads and posts, but every search seemed to hit a dead end. It was as if the program had been erased from existence, leaving no digital footprint behind. Frustration mounting, John decided to take his investigation offline. He visited local libraries and public archives, delving into old newspapers, television guides, and community records. The librarians were helpful, but had no knowledge of the program he described. Each visit only reinforced the unsettling reality that no one else remembered the show. The more he searched, the more he felt that he was chasing shadows, trying to grasp at something that didn't exist. During one particularly fruitless afternoon at the library, John stumbled upon an old newspaper clipping tucked away in a forgotten section. The headline read, "Local Children's Show Celebrates its 5th Anniversary." His heart raced as he read the brief article, which mentioned a program called Magical Adventures that had aired during the late 1980s. The description matched the vague outlines of his memories, but the article provided little more information. Undeterred, John took the clipping home, believing it was a crucial piece of the puzzle. Back at his apartment, John began cross-referencing the newspaper article with his own memories. Magical Adventures seemed to align with the colorful characters and catchy songs he remembered. However, the details he recalled were far more vivid and unsettling than what the article described. Determined to find more, he reached out to the library for additional archives and spent nights poring over old TV schedules and local broadcast records. Still, there was no further mention of the show beyond that single article. As the days turned into weeks, John began to notice subtle changes in his daily life. Objects around his apartment would shift positions when he wasn't looking, and he often heard faint whispers echoing through the rooms. The feeling of being watched became almost constant, seeping into his waking moments and dreams. These anomalies reinforced his belief that there was something supernatural at play, something connected to the forgotten TV show. To keep track of his findings and the strange occurrences, John started maintaining a detailed journal. He recorded every memory, every lead he followed, and every unexplained event that happened around him. The journal became both a tool and a solace, helping him to organize his thoughts and maintain his sanity amidst the growing chaos. One evening, as John reviewed his journal, he noticed a pattern emerging. The strange occurrences seemed to intensify around the anniversaries of the show's original airing dates. It was as if the program itself was marking the passage of time, reaching out to him in moments of significance. This realization spurred him to dig deeper into the history of Magical Adventures, hoping to uncover why it had been so meticulously erased from collective memory. John decided to visit the local television station that had originally broadcast the show. The building had long been abandoned, its windows boarded up and signs of decay evident. Undeterred by the eerie atmosphere, he managed to find an unsecured entrance and stepped inside. The air was thick with dust, and the remnants of old equipment lay scattered across the floor. As he navigated the dark corridors, John felt a strange pull, as if the building itself was guiding him towards something. In what appeared to be the old studio, John discovered a room that had once been the control center for Magical Adventures. The walls were lined with old cameras, mixing boards, and stacks of videotapes. Among the clutter, he found a ledger detailing the show's production, including names of staff and notes about episodes. However, one entry stood out, a reference to an experimental segment that was never aired, titled The Forgotten Realm. Intrigued, John took the ledger home and began to decipher the notes. The Forgotten Realm was described as an interactive segment meant to engage children's imaginations by creating a bridge between the show and their own memories. The notes hinted at the use of subliminal messaging and psychological techniques to enhance viewer participation. The final entry was a warning about unforeseen consequences and the need to monitor the segment closely. John realized that the Forgotten Realm might be the missing link to his own experiences. The experimental nature of the segment suggested that it could have gone beyond mere entertainment, possibly tapping into deeper psychological or supernatural elements. This discovery provided a new direction for his investigation, pointing to a deliberate effort to manipulate memories and perceptions. As John delved deeper into the implications of the ledger, the strange occurrences in his life intensified. He began experiencing vivid hallucinations of the show's characters, their eyes following him with an unnerving intensity. The whispers grew louder, sometimes forming coherent phrases that seemed to beckon him closer to the truth. The line between reality and illusion blurred, making it increasingly difficult for him to distinguish between the two. Determined to confront whatever force was behind these phenomena, John reached out to a former production assistant listed in the ledger, hoping to find someone who could shed light on the experimental segment. After persistent efforts, he managed to contact an elderly woman named Mrs. Thompson, who had worked closely with the show's creators. Reluctant at first, Mrs. Thompson agreed to meet him, sensing the seriousness of his quest. During their meeting, Mrs. Thompson revealed the dark history of Magical Adventures. She explained that The Forgotten Realm was an ambitious attempt to create an immersive experience for children, but the experiments had unforeseen side effects. Some viewers had developed obsessive attachments to the show, experiencing vivid hallucinations and emotional disturbances. The production team had attempted to shut down the segment, but not before a significant number of viewers had been affected. Mrs. Thompson expressed her regret over the project's failure and the subsequent efforts to erase its existence from public memory. She warned John that the lingering effects of The Forgotten Realm could still be influencing him, and that confronting the program might have dangerous consequences. Despite her warnings, John felt a surge of determination. He knew that understanding the true nature of the segment was essential to freeing himself from its grip. Armed with this new information, John felt a renewed sense of purpose. He now had a clearer target. The Forgotten Realm was the key to unlocking the mystery and putting an end to the haunting memories that plagued him. As he prepared to delve deeper into the dark legacy of the Forgotten TV show, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the brink of uncovering something far more sinister than he had ever imagined. With each step forward, the line between his past and present continued to blur, drawing him deeper into a web of psychological and supernatural intrigue. John knew that the path ahead was fraught with danger, but his determination to uncover the truth and reclaim his sanity propelled him onward, deeper into the shadows of his forgotten memories. With the revelations from Mrs. Thompson weighing heavily on him, John felt a renewed urgency to understand the full extent of The Forgotten Realm. The segment's experimental nature hinted at something far more profound and potentially dangerous than mere psychological manipulation. Determined to uncover the truth, John delved deeper into the archives he had access to, seeking any additional information that could shed light on the mysterious segment and its lasting impact. John began by revisiting the old newspaper clipping he had found, scrutinizing every detail for clues. He noticed a small note at the bottom of the article mentioning a Project Nexus, a code name that hadn't been elaborated upon. Intrigued, he decided to trace this reference, believing it might be connected to the broader scope of the experiments conducted by the Institute Mindwave. His investigation led him to contact other former employees of the television station, hoping to piece together the fragmented history of the show. After several days of persistent searching, John managed to reach out to a retired producer named Mr. Harris, who had worked closely with Mrs. Thompson during the production of Magical Adventures. Mr. Harris was initially hesitant to speak, but the earnestness in John's voice convinced him to share what he knew. During their conversation, Mr. Harris revealed that Project Nexus was an ambitious initiative aimed at pushing the boundaries of interactive television. The goal was to create a seamless blend between the fictional world of the show and the viewer's own memories, making the experience deeply immersive. However, as the project progressed, unforeseen complications arose. The use of subliminal messaging and psychological techniques to enhance viewer engagement had unintended side effects. Some children developed an obsessive attachment to the show, experiencing vivid hallucinations and emotional disturbances long after episodes had aired. The production team grew increasingly concerned as reports of these side effects surfaced, leading to the abrupt discontinuation of The Forgotten Realm. Mr. Harris admitted that the segment had been cut short due to the ethical and psychological implications of their experiments. The lingering effects of The Forgotten Realm were more severe than anyone had anticipated, and efforts to contain the fallout were only partially successful. This partial containment likely contributed to the erasure of the show from public memory, making it difficult for anyone outside the immediate production team to recall its existence. Armed with this new information, John felt a deeper connection to his own experiences. The fragmented memories and the supernatural occurrences he was enduring now seemed to be direct consequences of the failed experiment. He realized that the Forgotten Realm had not only affected him, but had left a lasting imprint on the minds of those who had watched it, creating echoes that persisted long after the show had ended. Determined to find a way to mitigate the effects and perhaps even reverse them, John decided to revisit the abandoned television station. He believed that there might be remnants of Project Nexus still hidden within the facility, holding the key to understanding and potentially stopping the supernatural disturbances. The thought of returning to the decrepit building filled him with a mix of fear and determination, but he knew it was a necessary step in his quest for answers. On a chilly autumn evening, John prepared himself for the visit. He equipped himself with a flashlight, a camera to document any findings, and a notebook to record observations. The abandoned station loomed in the distance, its broken windows and graffiti-covered walls casting long shadows under the dim streetlights. As he approached, the air grew colder, and an unsettling silence enveloped the area. Finding an unlocked side door, John slipped inside, the door creaking ominously as he pushed it open. The interior was cloaked in darkness, the remnants of old equipment scattered haphazardly across the floor. Dust motes floated in the narrow beams of light from his flashlight, creating an eerie atmosphere. He moved cautiously through the halls, each step echoing softly in the vast, empty space. Eventually, John reached what had once been the control room for Magical Adventures. The room was a time capsule of the past, with outdated computers, mixing boards, and stacks of videotapes strewn about. Amid the clutter, he found a filing cabinet that appeared less disturbed than the rest. With a deep breath, he opened the drawers, hoping to find documentation related to Project Nexus. Inside, he discovered a series of folders labeled with dates and experiment codes. As he sifted through the papers, he came across detailed reports and logs that outlined the progression of Project Nexus. The documents revealed the initial success of the segment in creating an immersive experience, but also highlighted the rapid onset of psychological side effects. One report, in particular, caught his attention. It described an attempt to contain the fallout by creating a digital archive that would only be accessible to a select few, ensuring that the segment remained hidden from the public eye. John realized that these archives might hold the solution to his predicament. He continued searching until he found a locked drawer labeled Confidential. Using a paperclip, he managed to pick the lock and retrieve a set of encrypted files stored on an old floppy disk. Knowing that accessing the data would require some technical expertise, he decided to take the disk to Mr. Harris for assistance. Returning home, John connected the floppy disk to his computer and watched as the files began to load. They contained detailed plans for the experimental segment, including the psychological techniques used to manipulate viewer memories and the procedures for maintaining the secrecy of Project Nexus. Among the files was a blueprint for a device referred to as the Memory Anchor, designed to stabilize the connection between the viewer's memories and the show's fictional world. John contacted Dr. Ricardo, explaining his findings and the potential significance of the Memory Anchor. Together, they theorized that this device could be the key to disrupting the supernatural connection and alleviating the haunting memories John was experiencing. However, the blueprint was incomplete, and they would need to find the remaining components to build or locate the original device. Driven by the urgency of his situation, John and Dr. Ricardo began coordinating their efforts. They contacted former members of the production team, hoping to find someone who might have knowledge of the Memory Anchor or access to its components. Their search led them to an old workshop where some of the show's technical staff had worked on developing the experimental technology. After several attempts, they managed to locate a retired technician named Mr. Evans, who agreed to meet them and share what he knew. During their meeting, Mr. Evans revealed that the Memory Anchor was never fully operational. The project had been abandoned before the device could be completed, leaving behind only partial schematics and a few experimental prototypes. He handed over the incomplete blueprints and a small prototype that had been kept hidden away, fearing the potential misuse of the technology. With the prototype in hand, John and Dr. Ricardo worked tirelessly to understand its mechanisms. The device was intricate, with multiple components designed to interface directly with the human brain. They hypothesized that activating the memory anchor could sever the connection between John's memories and the supernatural forces linked to the Forgotten Realm, thereby closing the portal that had been inadvertently opened. As they neared completion of their plan, the supernatural disturbances in John's life intensified. Shadows seemed to lengthen and twist in unnatural ways, and the whispers grew louder, now forming coherent threats. John knew that time was running out. The longer the connection remained open, the greater the risk of irreversible consequences. One stormy night, with rain lashing against the windows and thunder rumbling in the distance, John and Dr. Ricardo decided to activate the memory anchor. They set up the device in John's living room, carefully following the incomplete schematics to ensure it was properly configured. As they powered it on, the room filled with a low hum, and the air grew thick with tension. John sat in the center of the device, feeling a surge of energy coursing through his body. The device began to emit a pulsating light, synchronized with his heartbeat. Suddenly, the room around him began to distort, and the shadows seemed to converge towards him, forming the familiar shapes of the show's characters. The whispers reached a crescendo, and John felt a powerful force trying to pull him back into the memories. Drawing upon every ounce of his determination, John focused on his present reality, fighting against the overwhelming urge to succumb to the supernatural pull. Dr. Ricardo monitored the device closely, ensuring that it was functioning correctly. The memory anchor began to stabilize, its light growing brighter and more intense, creating a barrier between John and the encroaching shadows. As the device reached peak power, the connection between John's memories and the supernatural forces began to weaken. The characters from the show started to fade, their once menacing presence diminishing as the light from the memory anchor enveloped the room. The whispers gradually subsided, replaced by a profound silence that filled the space. With one final surge of energy, the device completed its cycle, and the room returned to normal. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and John felt a sense of relief wash over him. The haunting memories and supernatural disturbances had been silenced, and the connection to the Forgotten Realm had been severed. Exhausted but triumphant, John and Dr. Ricardo reviewed the results of their efforts. The memory anchor had successfully closed the portal, and the lingering effects of the experimental segment were no longer affecting John. The shadows receded, and the sense of being watched vanished, leaving behind a peaceful calm that had been absent for so long. As the storm outside began to subside, John reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. He had confronted the echoes of his past, unraveled the dark secrets of a forgotten TV show, and ultimately reclaimed his sanity and peace of mind. The experience had left an indelible mark on him, a reminder of the thin line between reality and the unknown. Though the immediate threat had been neutralized, John couldn't shake the lingering sense that there might still be unanswered questions. The warning from the entity, "This is not the end," haunted his thoughts, suggesting that the mysteries surrounding the Forgotten Realm were far from fully resolved. Nevertheless, he felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that he had taken significant steps to protect himself and others from the supernatural forces that had once threatened his very existence. With newfound clarity and resilience, John vowed to remain vigilant, ready to face any lingering shadows from his past. The journey had tested his courage and determination, but it had also revealed the strength he possessed to confront and overcome the darkest of mysteries. As he looked forward to rebuilding his life, John knew that he had emerged from the ordeal stronger and more aware of the hidden forces that lurked just beyond the veil of reality. The days following the activation of the memory anchor brought a semblance of normalcy to John's life. The oppressive shadows and incessant whispers had subsided, allowing him to breathe easier. However, the lingering sense of unease from the entity's warning, "This is not the end," kept him vigilant. John tried to focus on rebuilding his routine, But the mystery surrounding the Forgotten Realm continued to gnaw at his mind. One evening, as John was organizing his notes from the investigation, he stumbled upon a recurring name in the documents: Emily Carter. Emily had been one of the first children to watch Magical Adventures, and according to the old logs, she had been a standout viewer during the experimental segment. Intrigued, John decided to dig deeper into her story, hoping to find a connection to his own experiences. John's research led him to local news archives, where he found an article from the early 1990s reporting Emily's disappearance. The headline read, "Local Girl Vanishes Without a Trace." The article provided little detail, merely stating that Emily had been last seen leaving her home to attend an episode of Magical Adventures at the community center. Her disappearance had baffled authorities, and no evidence had ever been found to explain her sudden absence. Driven by a growing sense of dread, John reached out to the local police department to inquire about Emily's case. Officer Daniels, a middle-aged man with a sympathetic demeanor, agreed to meet him. During their conversation, Officer Daniels confirmed that Emily's case remained unsolved and that no new leads had emerged over the years. The lack of closure only deepened John's frustration and fear. Determined to find answers, John decided to visit the old community center where Emily had last been seen. The building had long since been abandoned, its windows boarded up and the playground equipment rusted and overgrown. As John approached, he felt a chill run down his spine, the same unsettling feeling he had experienced during his nightmares. Pushing open a side door, John entered the dark, decaying hallways of the community center. The air was thick with dust, and the remnants of past activities lay scattered around. He navigated through the empty corridors, his flashlight casting long, eerie shadows on the walls. In the main auditorium, he found remnants of the show's broadcasts: old posters, broken projectors, and scattered videotapes. Among the debris, John discovered a small, locked cabinet tucked away in a corner. With some effort, he managed to open it, revealing a collection of old VHS tapes labeled with dates and episode titles. One tape stood out, Episode 12, The Vanishing Act. His heart raced as he realized the potential significance of this episode in relation to Emily's disappearance. John took the tape home and set up his old VHS player. As the episode began to play, he watched intently, recognizing familiar characters and settings from his own memories. However, this episode was different. The atmosphere was noticeably darker, the colors muted, and an unsettling silence hung in the air. The episode focused on a magic trick where a performer attempted to make a volunteer disappear on stage. As the trick unfolded, John noticed subtle discrepancies, shadows that seemed to move independently, whispers that echoed faintly in the background, and a sense of foreboding that was absent from other episodes. When the volunteer vanished, there was no applause or reaction from the audience. Instead, the lights flickered, and the screen went black, leaving the audience in stunned silence. Feeling a growing sense of dread, John replayed the episode, scrutinizing every detail for clues. During the closing credits, a series of symbols appeared briefly on the screen, similar to those he had found in the old laboratory. These symbols seemed to pulse and shift, forming a pattern that resonated deeply with him. John realized that The Vanishing Act was more than just an episode. It was a deliberate attempt to manipulate the viewer's perceptions and memories. Determined to understand the connection between the episode and the disappearances, John revisited the documents he had gathered from the abandoned television station. He cross-referenced the symbols from the episode with those found in the Project Nexus files and discovered a recurring motif: a spiral intertwined with an eye, representing a gateway between dimensions. This symbol was central to the Memory Anchor's operation and likely played a crucial role in the supernatural occurrences tied to the show. As John delved deeper, he uncovered a list of other missing individuals who had been avid viewers of Magical Adventures. Each name was accompanied by a brief description and the last known date of their disappearance, all of which coincided with the airing of The Forgotten Realm. The pattern was undeniable. Those who remembered the show were the ones who vanished without a trace. Feeling the weight of the responsibility, John knew he had to act quickly to prevent more disappearances. he decided to confront the lingering remnants of the experiment, believing that the memory anchor might still hold the key to severing the connection. With the support of Dr. Ricardo, they devised a plan to trace the origins of the symbols and understand how they could be used to protect others from the same fate. Their investigation led them to a secluded part of the city where remnants of the Institute Mindwaves operations were rumored to exist. Through a series of discreet inquiries and careful surveillance, John and Dr. Ricardo uncovered a hidden facility that had once served as the primary research center for Project Nexus. The building was heavily fortified, but they managed to find a hidden entrance using the knowledge gleaned from the memory anchor blueprints. Inside, the facility was a labyrinth of underground chambers and high-tech equipment, now dormant and covered in dust. As they navigated the dark corridors, John felt an overwhelming sense of being watched, the same oppressive presence that had plagued him before. In the central laboratory, they discovered a large console with active power sources and monitors still displaying live feeds from the old experiments. Among the clutter, they found a series of files detailing the progression of Project Nexus and the ethical breaches that had led to its downfall. The final entries revealed that the program had been abandoned after several high-profile disappearances, with the remaining data being secured in an encrypted archive to prevent misuse. However, it was clear that the experiment had not been fully contained, leaving the door open for unintended consequences. As they sifted through the files, John and Dr. Ricardo realized that the memory anchor was only a temporary solution. The true key to preventing further disappearances lay in fully dismantling the experimental technology and ensuring that no remnants of the program remained active. The symbols they had uncovered were part of a larger framework designed to create and maintain the supernatural connection. And without addressing the entire system, the threat would persist. Determined to put an end to the nightmare, John and Dr. Ricardo set about deactivating the remaining equipment and destroying the experimental data. As they worked, the oppressive presence intensified, shadows creeping closer and whispers growing louder, attempting to halt their progress. The facility seemed to resist their efforts, the environment becoming increasingly hostile, as if the experiment itself was fighting back. In the midst of their struggle, John felt a surge of determination. He knew that saving himself and others depended on their ability to overcome the supernatural forces tied to the program. With a final push, they managed to shut down the central console, causing a cascading shutdown of the entire facility's systems. The oppressive energy dissipated, and the whispers faded into silence, leaving behind an eerie stillness. Exhausted but triumphant, John and Dr. Ricardo emerged from the hidden facility, the weight of their actions settling upon them. They had successfully dismantled the remnants of Project Nexus, severing the supernatural connection that had caused so much pain and loss. However, the sense of unease persisted, a lingering reminder that the battle might not be entirely over. As they parted ways, John couldn't help but wonder about the true extent of the program's influence and the possibility that other hidden threats remained. The disappearances had ceased, and the immediate danger had been neutralized, but the shadows of the past still loomed large in his mind. He knew that the journey to fully reclaim his memories and ensure the safety of others was far from complete. Walking away from the abandoned facility, John felt a mix of relief and apprehension. The mysteries of the Forgotten Realm had been unraveled to a significant extent, but the entity's ominous warning echoed in his thoughts, hinting at deeper layers yet to be uncovered. Determined to remain vigilant, John vowed to continue his quest for the truth, knowing that the shadows of the past could always resurface when least expected. As the sun set, casting long shadows over the city, John felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had faced the echoes of the past and confronted the supernatural forces that sought to manipulate his memories. While the immediate threat had been quelled, he remained aware that some mysteries were far more complex and enduring than he had ever imagined. With each step forward, John embraced the uncertainty, ready to face whatever darkness the forgotten memories might yet reveal. Despite successfully dismantling the remnants of Project Nexus and severing the immediate supernatural ties to the Forgotten Realm, John couldn't shake the feeling that something unfinished lingered in the shadows. The warning from the entity, "This is not the end," echoed persistently in his mind, fueling his determination to ensure that no further harm would come to him or anyone else affected by the program. A few weeks had passed since the shutdown of the hidden facility. Life had returned to a semblance of normalcy for John. The haunting memories had lessened, and the unsettling presence that once filled his home had dissipated. However, the tranquility was short-lived. One evening, as John was reviewing his notes from the investigation, he noticed an anomaly in his journal. There was a page that he hadn't written, detailing an episode of Magical Adventures that he had no recollection of ever watching. The episode was titled The Eternal Echo. Curiosity piqued. John decided to search for any existing recordings of The Eternal Echo. His efforts led him back to the abandoned television station, now repurposed into a storage facility. With a mixture of apprehension and resolve, he made his way back to the old building, hoping to uncover more about this mysterious episode. Upon arrival, John found that the facility had been partially renovated, but certain sections remained untouched. He navigated through the corridors until he reached the storage area where he had previously found the experimental files. To his surprise, he discovered a locked cabinet that had been sealed off since his last visit. Using the knowledge he had gained from the memory anchor blueprints, John managed to unlock the cabinet, revealing a collection of tapes labeled The Eternal Echo. Taking the tapes home, John set up his old VHS player once again. As he pressed play on The Eternal Echo, a sense of foreboding washed over him. The episode began similarly to the others, with the familiar characters of Tico and Lila greeting the audience. However, this episode had a darker tone from the outset. The colors were muted, and the cheerful music was replaced with a haunting melody that seemed to resonate deep within his soul. The plot of The Eternal Echo revolved around a mysterious forest where the characters embarked on an adventure to find a hidden treasure. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the atmosphere grew increasingly eerie. Shadows danced unnaturally, and whispers filled the air, guiding them toward an ancient, abandoned cabin. Upon reaching the cabin, the characters discovered a mirror that reflected not just their images, but also their deepest fears and memories. As the episode progressed, the mirror began to show distorted visions of John himself, scenes from his past that he had long forgotten or chosen to suppress. The characters in the show seemed unerringly aware of his presence, addressing him directly and urging him to confront his hidden memories. The episode concluded abruptly as the mirror shattered, releasing a dark, swirling mist that engulfed the screen before abruptly cutting to black. Shaken by the episode, John felt a chill run down his spine. The connection between his personal memories and the supernatural elements of the show had never been more direct. He realized that The Eternal Echo was not just another segment, but a deliberate attempt to probe deeper into his psyche, perhaps even to reach out and manipulate his memories further. Determined to understand the purpose behind this episode, John revisited the files from the abandoned facility. He scoured the documents for any mention of The Eternal Echo or related experiments. It was then that he stumbled upon a forgotten section of the ledger, detailing advanced projects undertaken by Project Nexus. Among these was a reference to Project Echo, a supplementary initiative aimed at creating a more profound and lasting connection between the viewers' minds and the show's fictional world. The documents revealed that Project Echo sought to delve into the subconscious, using episodes like The Eternal Echo to unlock and manipulate hidden memories. The goal was to create an immersive experience that went beyond visual and auditory stimulation, tapping directly into the viewer's emotional and psychological states. However, as with previous experiments, the project had unforeseen consequences, leading to severe psychological disturbances and unexplained disappearances. Realizing the gravity of the situation, John knew that The Eternal Echo was more than just an episode. It was a tool designed to maintain and strengthen the supernatural connection between the show and its viewers. The episode's ability to reflect his personal memories indicated that the program was evolving, becoming more attuned to his individual psyche in a way that posed a greater threat than before. As John grappled with this revelation, he began to experience subtle but persistent disturbances once more. At first, it was faint whispers echoing through his apartment, reminiscent of the ones from the show. Objects would occasionally shift positions, and he felt an intangible presence watching him, even in the most mundane moments. These disturbances were more intense than before, suggesting that Project Echo was reactivating its influence over him. Determined to prevent further manipulation, John reached out to Dr. Ricardo once again. Together, they reviewed the new findings and devised a plan to counteract the effects of Project Echo. They hypothesized that the memory anchor, while effective in severing the immediate connection, might not be sufficient to address the deeper, more personalized influence exerted by Project Echo. They needed a way to shield John's mind from the program's invasive attempts to probe his subconscious. Their research led them to explore advanced psychological techniques and protective measures against subliminal manipulation. They discovered references to a method known as cognitive shielding, which involved reinforcing the mind's natural defenses to resist external psychological influences. Implementing this technique required both mental discipline and the use of specific visual and auditory cues to reinforce the shielding effect. John began practicing cognitive shielding daily, focusing on strengthening his mental resilience and creating a barrier against intrusive memories and supernatural attempts to manipulate his thoughts. Dr. Ricardo assisted him by designing a series of guided meditations and affirmations tailored to counteract the show's influence. Additionally, they incorporated the use of white noise generators and ambient sounds to mask any subliminal messages that might be embedded within the program's episodes. As John immersed himself in these practices, he noticed a gradual reduction in the disturbances. The whispers became less frequent, and the feeling of being watched diminished. However, he remained vigilant, aware that Project Echo might escalate its efforts to regain control. The warning from the entity still lingered, a constant reminder of the ongoing battle between his mind and the supernatural forces tied to the show. One night, as John was deep in meditation, he experienced a vivid hallucination. He found himself back in the eerie forest from the Eternal Echo, facing the same ancient mirror that had reflected his memories. This time, however, the atmosphere felt different, more menacing and oppressive. The characters from the show appeared once again, their eyes fixed on him with a predatory gaze. "Tico, Lila," John called out, trying to steady his voice despite the fear gripping him. "What do you want from me?" The characters responded in unison, their voices distorted and echoing unnaturally. "We seek to complete what was started. Your memories are the key to our existence." John felt the oppressive force pressing in on him, attempting to break through his cognitive shield. Drawing upon his mental training, he focused on reinforcing the barrier around his mind. The guided affirmations from Dr. Ricardo echoed in his thoughts, providing strength and clarity. "You have no power here," John declared, his voice unwavering. "I will not let you control me." The characters seemed to falter, their forms flickering as the cognitive shield took hold. The oppressive presence began to weaken, the dark mist dissipating as the barrier around John's mind solidified. With a final surge of determination, John banished the hallucination, bringing himself back to his apartment with a deep sense of relief. Exhausted but resolute, John realized that the battle against Project Echo was far from over. While the cognitive shield provided temporary protection, he understood that a more permanent solution was necessary to fully sever the supernatural connection. He and Dr. Ricardo continued their research, exploring ways to dismantle the remnants of Project Echo and ensure that no one else would fall victim to its manipulative influence. Their efforts led them to uncover a hidden subroutine within the memory anchor's blueprints, an override mechanism designed to permanently disable any lingering supernatural connections. Implementing this override required access to the original device and the specific symbols that had been used to activate it. With this knowledge, John and Dr. Ricardo prepared to confront the remaining threats, determined to eliminate the supernatural influence once and for all. As they moved forward with their plan, John felt a renewed sense of hope. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, but his resilience and unwavering determination gave him the strength to face whatever darkness lay ahead. The echoes of the past had been powerful, but John was ready to silence them and reclaim his life from the shadows of the forgotten TV show. John and Dr. Ricardo sat in the dimly lit room, the blueprints of the memory anchors spread out before them. The discovery of the override mechanism had reignited their hope of permanently severing the supernatural connections tied to the Forgotten Realm. However, they knew that implementing the override would not be straightforward. The remaining threats were subtle yet persistent, and the entity's warning, "This is not the end," lingered ominously in John's mind. Determined to find a way to fully disable the memory anchor and eliminate any residual influence, John delved deeper into the files they had uncovered. Among the fragmented notes and schematics, he found a reference to Project Eclipse, an advanced phase of Project Nexus that had been abruptly halted. The notes hinted at a final safeguard, a failsafe designed to prevent the complete shutdown of the project. This safeguard was encoded within the memory anchor's core programming, requiring a specific sequence of symbols to deactivate. Realizing that these symbols were the key to the override, John and Dr. Ricardo began to piece together the puzzle. They revisited the symbols from the Eternal Echo and cross-referenced them with the ones found in the experimental segments. The spiral intertwined with the eye appeared consistently, suggesting it was the primary code necessary for the shutdown. As they worked tirelessly to decode the sequence, John couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The supernatural disturbances had begun to resurface, albeit more sporadically. Shadows flickered at the edges of his vision, and whispers echoed through his apartment once more, albeit less intensely. It was clear that the entity was attempting to regain its influence, pushing harder to maintain the connection between the two realms. One night, as John was engrossed in deciphering the final symbols, the room plunged into darkness. The lights flickered and went out, leaving him and Dr. Ricardo in eerie silence. Suddenly, the oppressive presence returned with full force. The characters from the show materialized around them, their eyes gleaming with a malevolent intent. "Tico, Lila," John whispered, his voice trembling. "What do you want from us?" Tico stepped forward, his once friendly demeanor now twisted with malice. "We seek completion. The portal remains unstable, and without intervention, chaos will reign." Lila added, her voice cold and detached. "You cannot stop what has begun. The connection is eternal." John felt a surge of fear, but remained resolute. "We won't let you continue this. We're shutting it down." The characters laughed, a hollow and unsettling sound that echoed through the room. "You think you can dismantle the memory anchor? It was designed to be unbreakable." Dr. Ricardo stepped forward, holding the decoded sequence of symbols. "Not unbreakable, just resilient. We have the means to end this." With the sequence in hand, John activated the memory anchor override. The device hummed to life, its lights pulsating in synchronization with the symbols. The room began to shimmer, the boundary between reality and the supernatural realm blurring as the override took effect. The characters tried to resist, their forms flickering as the override disrupted their connection to the portal. "You cannot defeat us?" Tico shouted, his voice distorted by the interference. "The portal will reopen." John focused on the sequence, reciting the symbols with unwavering determination. The room filled with a blinding light as the memory anchor began to shut down, severing the ties between the two realms. The characters screamed in frustration as their connection weakened, their forms dissolving into shadows that dissipated into the air. As the override completed, the oppressive presence lifted, and the room returned to its normal state. The lingering whispers ceased, and the shadows receded, leaving John and Dr. Ricardo standing in the quiet aftermath of their confrontation. Breathing heavily, John felt a profound sense of relief wash over him. "It's over," he whispered, though uncertainty still lingered. "For now." Dr. Ricardo nodded, exhaustion etched on his face. "We did it, but we need to ensure that no remnants of Project Nexus remain active. There might still be hidden components that could pose a threat." John agreed, knowing that their work was far from finished. They began a thorough search of the memory anchor device, dismantling its components and destroying any remaining data. The override mechanism had worked, but they needed to ensure that no one else could inadvertently reignite the supernatural connection. In the days that followed, John noticed a significant improvement in his daily life. The shadows no longer flickered at the edges of his vision, and the whispers had become nothing more than distant memories. The memories of the Forgotten Realm had started to fade, replaced by the comforting routine of normalcy. However, the entity's warning still echoed in his mind, a reminder that the battle might not be entirely over. John and Dr. Ricardo remained vigilant, continuing their efforts to uncover any remaining secrets of Project Nexus and ensure that the supernatural forces could never again manipulate or harm innocent lives. One evening, as John sat in his now peaceful apartment, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He had faced unimaginable horrors, delved into forgotten memories, and confronted supernatural entities that sought to control his mind. Through it all, his determination and resilience had seen him through, allowing him to reclaim his sanity and protect others from the same fate. As he looked out the window, the city lights twinkling in the distance, John felt a sense of accomplishment mixed with cautious optimism. The truth had been revealed, and the immediate threat had been neutralized, but he remained aware that some mysteries were too deeply rooted to be completely unraveled. The shadows of the past had been silenced, but the lessons learned would stay with him forever. With a deep breath, John embraced the tranquility of the present, ready to move forward while remaining ever watchful for any signs of lingering darkness. The story of the Forgotten Realm had come to a close, but the echoes of its existence would forever be a testament to the thin line between reality and the unknown. The weeks following the successful deactivation of the memory anchor brought a profound sense of relief to John. The oppressive shadows that once haunted his apartment had vanished, and the whispers that echoed through his mind had become mere echoes of a distant nightmare. Life had settled into a calm routine, and John began to believe that the ordeal was finally over. However, the lingering echo of the entity's warning, "This is not the end," remained etched in his memory, a subtle reminder that some mysteries refused to remain buried. One crisp autumn evening, as John was organizing his notes and reflecting on the journey he had undertaken, his phone buzzed with an unexpected notification. It was an email from an unknown sender, containing a single attachment labeled finalevidence.pdf. Hesitant yet driven by an insatiable need for closure, John opened the file. The document was a comprehensive report detailing the full extent of Project Nexus, including undisclosed experiments and unexplored segments of magical adventures. Among the revelations was a mention of Project Rebirth, an initiative aimed at creating a permanent bridge between dimensions, ensuring that the supernatural connection could never be entirely severed. John's heart raced as he realized the implications. Despite their efforts to dismantle the remaining components, Project Rebirth had been an ambitious plan to maintain the portal indefinitely. The report suggested that certain elements within the memory anchor had been designed to reactivate under specific conditions, ensuring the program's persistence. This revelation reignited his fear, confirming that the entity's warning was not mere superstition, but a tangible threat. Determined to prevent any possibility of Project Rebirth from coming to fruition, John sought out Dr. Ricardo once more. Together, they reviewed the new information, cross-referencing it with their existing knowledge. The report outlined a hidden subroutine within the memory anchor's core programming, capable of self-replication and remote activation. If left unchecked, this subroutine could reignite the supernatural connection, leading to further disappearances and the potential collapse of the boundary between dimensions. Realizing that the threat was far from over, John and Dr. Ricardo devised a plan to locate and neutralize the remaining subroutine. Their investigation led them to a secluded area on the outskirts of the city, where remnants of the Institute Mindwave's research facilities still stood. The abandoned buildings, cloaked in darkness and overgrown vegetation, exuded an aura of forgotten secrets and untold horrors. Under the cover of night, John and Dr. Ricardo navigated through the decaying structures, their flashlights piercing the inky blackness. They reached the main research building, its entrance sealed with heavy bolts and guarded by layers of security measures. Using the schematics from the reports, they managed to bypass the defenses and gain entry, stepping into a cavernous lab filled with dormant equipment and strewn papers. In the center of the room stood the original memory anchor device, its once formidable presence now appearing inert. However, as they approached, the device began to emit a faint hum, a subtle sign that the subroutine was still active. John's pulse quickened as he realized that time was running out. They needed to act swiftly to prevent the subroutine from reactivating fully. Dr. Ricardo accessed the device's interface, navigating through layers of encrypted code. "We need to isolate the subroutine and erase it completely," he instructed, his fingers flying over the keyboard. John stood guard, the room's oppressive atmosphere pressing down on him as shadows seemed to dance at the edges of his vision. The hum of the memory anchor grew louder, and the air thickened with a palpable sense of malevolence. As Dr. Ricardo delved deeper into the code, alarms began to blare, signaling that the subroutine was attempting to regain control. The lights flickered, casting erratic shadows that morphed into the familiar, sinister forms of Tico and Lila. The characters materialized before them, their eyes burning with an unholy intensity. "You cannot stop us," Tico intoned, his voice echoing unnaturally. "The portal must remain open." John felt a surge of fear, but remained steadfast. "We will stop you," he declared, his voice resolute. "This ends now." Dr. Ricardo worked tirelessly, his concentration unwavering despite the mounting pressure. The characters advanced, their presence growing more formidable as the subroutine fought back. "You cannot defeat what has been set in motion," Lila hissed, her form distorting with dark energy. With a final burst of determination, Dr. Ricardo located the subroutine's core code. "I've found it," he announced, typing rapidly. "We need to initiate the complete erase protocol now." John nodded, providing cover as Dr. Ricardo executed the command. The memory anchor began to emit a blinding light, and the room trembled with the force of the subroutine's resistance. The characters screamed in frustration, their forms flickering as the erase protocol took effect. "No, you cannot!" Tico shouted, his voice cracking under the strain. As the protocol reached its culmination, the memory anchor emitted a final, intense pulse of energy. The characters disintegrated into shadows, their malevolent presence evaporating into the ether. The device powered down, and silence enveloped the room once more. John and Dr. Ricardo stood amidst the remnants of their struggle, the threat finally neutralized. Breathing heavily, John felt a profound sense of relief wash over him. "It's over," he whispered, though a lingering unease remained. "We did it." Dr. Ricardo nodded, exhaustion evident in his posture. "Yes, but we need to ensure that no remnants of Project Rebirth remain. There might still be hidden components that could pose a future threat." Together, they conducted a thorough search of the facility, dismantling any remaining equipment and destroying all evidence of Project Nexus and Project Rebirth. Their efforts ensured that the supernatural connection was permanently severed, safeguarding countless lives from the program's dark influence. Returning to his apartment, John felt a sense of closure that had eluded him for so long. The memories of the Forgotten Realm and the haunting presence had been eradicated, allowing him to reclaim his peace and sanity. However, the entity's warning still echoed faintly in his mind, a reminder that some forces are not easily vanquished. In the weeks that followed, John focused on rebuilding his life, embracing the normalcy he had longed for. The shadows no longer flickered at the edges of his vision, and the whispers had faded into silence. He maintained contact with Dr. Ricardo, ensuring that their work to eradicate any lingering threats was thorough and complete. One evening, as John sat by the window watching the sunset, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He had faced unimaginable horrors, delved into forgotten memories, and confronted supernatural entities that sought to manipulate his mind. Through it all, his resilience and unwavering determination had seen him through, allowing him to reclaim his life from the shadows of a forgotten TV show. As darkness settled over the city, John felt a deep sense of gratitude for the strength he had discovered within himself. The journey had tested his courage and sanity, but it had also revealed the depths of his resilience. While the immediate threat had been neutralized, he remained vigilant, knowing that some mysteries are too deeply rooted to be entirely resolved. With a final glance at the peaceful night outside, John embraced the tranquility of his present, ready to move forward with a newfound appreciation for the fragility of memory and the enduring power of the human spirit. The story of the Forgotten Realm had come to a close, but the lessons learned and the courage displayed would forever remain a testament to his journey through darkness and into the light.